Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very young and accomplished musician from Mumbai, India, Mr. Tavan Shah. Tavan, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ashutosh ji. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Tavan is a concert pianist and a music pedagogue. So, Tavan, you began your musical journey at the age of 5 in Vadodara. What first drew you to music at such a young age?
It actually comes down to a single fateful sliding door moment. I remember it was my fifth birthday, and my parents had taken me to a toy shop,
Hmm.
and they said that I could pick out absolutely anything I wanted.
Hmm.
And out of all the action figures, cars, or games in that store, I somehow happened to choose this cute-looking toy keyboard.
Okay.
And we brought it home, and I think that single choice set the course for my entire life. And my parents quickly noticed my fascination with this little toy, and they quickly enrolled me to a teacher that lived nearby to our house.
Hmm.
And interestingly, in my journey as a pianist, my beginning was actually my basics were actually grounded in Indian classical
Yeah.
harmonium and voice.
Hmm.
And it was from I feel so grateful um, to be initiated into this ancient art from this early age.
Fascinating.
And I genuinely believe, looking back, that music must have chosen me, and not probably the other way around. Because if that
Hmm.
5-year-old boy would have chosen some other toy, maybe I would be somewhere else altogether now.
Absolutely. Very well said. Very well said. Thank you. And you just mentioned, your interest in Indian classical vocal music and harmonium. How did learning these shape your understanding of music?
Yeah, I think Indian classical music didn't only just teach me how to sing and play, but it gave me the fundamental operating system of how sound works. It
Hmm.
hardwired those absolute basics of music from a very early age in my brain. We have the two main components. We have the swars, which are the notes, and tal, which is the rhythm.
Hmm.
And because this system was infused in my mind and in me from such an early age, I think my mind automatically started processing everything that I heard in Saregama.
Hmm.
And it's later on became such an obsession for me that I would always try to listen to like tunes, and then my mind would try to decode it in Saregama, and then I would replay it on the keyboard.
Hmm.
And and I realized that, looking back, that that habit of listening and reverse engineering things and analyzing it would later on help me immensely when I came across Western classical music, because it has because to navigate the complex architecture of music, because I had the analytical foundation of decoding everything in Saregama. When I eventually came to understand Western classical music, all these complex concepts like harmony, structure, form, modulation, and the nuances of every historical era of classical music did not seem all very overwhelming to me. It somehow all made complete logical sense.
Fascinating, fascinating. And I can understand what you're saying because I play the classical flute myself, but
Hmm.
certainly not at the level that you are, obviously playing. But moving on, Tavan, from such a strong grounding in Indian classical, you
Mhm.
transitioned to Western classical piano. Tell
Right.
me about this transition, and were there any challenges you faced in the transition?
Yeah, I guess my switch from Indian classical to Western classical happened somewhere around the age of 9 or 10, and it was this moment when I had started learning guitar as well.
Hmm.
And through guitar, I got exposed to rock and pop music. And as I was learning songs on guitar, I became obsessed with Metallica's "Nothing Else Matters" and Guns N' Roses' "Sweet Child O' Mine," and especially that epic guitar solo that Slash plays in "Sweet Child O' Mine." And as I was learning them on guitar, I would also try to plunk those notes out from the solo, and I would try it out on the keyboard. And I felt that was great because back then I used to play the harmonium, and you're required to use your second hand to pump the instrument, and then you play the notes with your main hand.
Hmm.
And that's all I knew that was possible when you play the keyboard or a keyboard instrument. So I really challenged myself in a way that I tried to play the fast solo on the harmonium or on the keyboard, and I was really trying to find a way to challenge myself even more on
Hmm.
this in this keyboard playing. And this was again back in 2009, and I
Hmm.
had just started exploring YouTube, and I came across a video of pianist Scott D Davis
Hmm.
playing these rock anthems on the piano, on this huge instrument called piano. And he played these songs not only just with one hand, but he recreated the entire essence of the songs, including the chords, including a little bit of the rhythm, and then the melody, and he used both of his hands. And especially I remember the moment where I saw how both of his fingers just moved in this beautiful synchronization. It was visually mesmerized, and it left me so fascinated. And I felt like I need to learn how to play this way.
Hmm.
And because thanks to my Indian classical upbringing, my ears were always very strong, and I could catch things and reproduce them back. So I really put that to test as well. I tried to understand what is he playing in the left hand, what is he playing in the right hand, and then I self-taught myself this two-hand coordination.
Wow.
So, and that eventually led me to exploring even more music written for piano specifically.
Hmm.
And I came across classical music of Beethoven, Chopin, and when I
Hmm.
heard that, I felt such a deep calling for me. And probably it was that fascination and fascination to explore that which has led me on this journey so far.
Hmm. Amazing. Amazing. Tavan, the piano is often described as both an orchestra and a solo instrument. What
Right.
fascinates you the most about a piano?
Uh, I remember the very one of the very first instances where I saw the piano for the first time in my life. This was also back in 2009 in a hotel lobby in Thailand. And what fascinated and what drew me to that instrument was definitely the music. It sounded amazing when I heard it live, but it was also the its commanding presence in the room. It's this huge instrument. It looks so elegant, and I noticed that the moment a person sat on the bench and played the piano, their aura just felt instantly elevated,
Hmm.
and that left me fascinated. Um, and the thing that I like the most about piano is that it doesn't have these thousands of switches and controllers. It doesn't come in flashy colors or trendy colors. It has just simple black, white, rosewood, mahogany, just those simple
Hmm.
colors, and it has one fundamental sound. It's that piano tone. It does not have like thousand different sound libraries in it. And yet out of this severe physical constraint, there is a universe of infinite possibilities that comes about. And I really feel like piano is the ultimate symbol of power and refinement, because if you can if you can hide this massive mechanical genius in this very flawlessly simple and elegant interface, I think I really I still feel drawn to the piano the same way as I did back in 2009.
That's one of the best descriptions I've ever heard of a piano. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Uh, Moving on, Tavan, you also had the opportunity to receive lessons from Dr. Leslie Howard in London. What was the most valuable lesson you took away from him, and how important is mentorship in the development of a classical musician?
Right. I very much look forward to the phase that I had. I had studied with Dr. Leslie Howard for 6 months, and one of the main takeaways for me from that phase was I got to learn and accumulate a vast volume of piano literature in a
Hmm.
very small period of time. Now, Leslie Howard is well known as a pianist, and he's known one of the main things he's known for is that he holds the Guinness Book of World Record for being the most recorded classical artist in history,
Wow.
and
Hmm.
he has more than 1,000+ hours of recording. He's recorded complete works of all major composers: Liszt, Beethoven, Chopin. And when you're sitting in a room with such a person, it really it really challenges you to think what is actually what an artist is actually capable of. I
Hmm.
remember one evening, one of his proteges had come over, and I happened to be there as well, and they were having dinner. And as a casual dinner conversation, they were just listing out complete works of Beethoven in chronological order.
Hmm.
Now, so that environment really forced me and pushed me to also learn a vast majority of repertoire in a very small period of time.
Hmm.
And that also brings me why mentorship is so critical in classical music as well.
Hmm.
um, because we have these sheet music or the notation, and that really gives us quite a lot of information, and it is very detailed of what the composer is wanting the performer to play and how the music should sound. But along with all this vast majority of information on the notations, there are some nuances and some things which have been passed on in oral traditions. Most probably it comes from the composer themselves, and they impart it to their pupils, and then it
Hmm.
gets passed down over the generations.
Hmm.
And to give you a very simple example, if there is a if there is a loud and a powerful passage written in Mozart's music, cannot be played the same way as the loud and powerful passage written by Rachmaninoff.
Hmm.
When in Mozart, uh, it is about the sharp elegance of the 18th century Vienna that we are trying to portray. And when you're trying to play the same loud section passage in Rachmaninoff's music, Rachmaninoff is actually probably thinking about those heavy tolling of the Russian Orthodox church bells. So only a great master who has um, who has learned this in that tradition and in that historical lineage can pass it down and can really show you those nuances. This is where
Hmm.
I feel mentorship plays a big role.
Very interesting. Thank you. Moving on, Tavan. Today you are a teacher, accompanist, and a performer with the Mehli Mehta Music Foundation. What role does teaching play in your musical life?
I think I started music when I was sorry. I started teaching when I was 16 years old, and it was thanks to my piano teacher back. My piano teacher, he really encouraged me that I should help out the people who are just starting out, the beginners, and that would in turn help me strengthen my foundation and my basics. And
Hmm.
ever since then, I think teaching had always remained with me in background, and I used to teach in some form or the other,
Hmm.
but I never really thought that I would be teaching on a daily basis so much. And I think my ever since I started working with the Meli Mehta Music Foundation, which was in July 2023,
Hmm.
it has been such an eye-opening journey. And I've realized one thing absolutely clearly, that teaching is not a detour from performance in any way. If anything, it is a mirror for self-mastery, because when I'm trying to help out, when I'm trying to work with a student as they are struggling with a difficult passage,
Hmm.
I have to be very non-judgmental, very compassionate, and have to always and always try to put myself in their shoes and try to understand why they are struggling from their point of view.
Yeah.
And in the process, I've realized that if when I am practicing and if
Hmm.
I find myself struggling, I don't default to attacking myself or feeling insecure about it.
Hmm.
Teaching has encouraged me to use the same approach for myself, to really see the problem non-judgmentally for what it is, and be more forgiving and more patient with myself as well.
Hmm. Amazing.
So that way it has really transformed me.
Amazing. Amazing introspection. Thank you. When you accompany other musicians, how different is that experience compared to performing solo?
If you would have asked this question to a younger me, and by younger me I mean even just a year back, I would have immediately said that I enjoy playing solo so much because there is this thrill of being on the stage. You have this
Hmm.
spotlight absolutely on you in this hall full of people, and it is very thrilling experience. But as my approach to music has deepened over the years, and I've had these philosophical conversations with my teachers and my professors, I've come to realize how accompanying or being part of a chamber music group, which is basically it is you and other musicians,
Hmm.
and you are collectively playing together.
Hmm.
I've really come to appreciate accompanying and playing in chamber music. And I've had so many teachers, and they've all taught me various different things, but they've all unanimously agreed on one thing, and they've really strongly taught me that value, that you have to detach yourself from the equation,
Hmm.
get rid of the ego. When I am playing, for example, a Beethoven sonata, it should not be Tavan Shah playing Beethoven sonata, or see how Tavan Shah's fingers fly when he's playing Beethoven sonata. I should, if anything, I should just be this conduit for the music and for Beethoven's essence to flow through me to the audience.
Hmm.
And it is a lifelong journey trying to strike this balance. And I've realized that when I'm accompanying or when I'm playing in chamber music group, it's very easy for me to dissolve my ego, because
Hmm.
it's not, the spotlight is not on me. We are
Correct.
all collectively aiming for music. So it's very easy for me to dissolve myself and just devote myself entirely to the music. And that's why chamber music is very sacred for me. And now this philosophy has the ultimate test when I'm playing solo, because
Hmm.
even though I as much as I try to dissolve myself and just devote myself to the music, there's some part of me which still thinks about this Tavan Shah, and probably it's the spotlight coming on me. So yeah, it is this lifelong journey, and I would also like to eventually try and see if I can dissolve my ego in the same way as I'm able to do in chamber music.
Amazing. And you perform a wide repertoire from classical piano to artists like Coldplay, ABBA, Queen, and the Beatles. How do you decide what to include in your concerts?
For me, when I'm doing classical recitals, it does become quite easy choice, because we have over the years we have a certain template, or a way of a blueprint of how we can structure a program. We try our best to bring out the versatility of not only the performer but also of this instrument, piano,
Hmm.
because piano has itself gone through various transformations. When Bach wrote his music for the keyboard, he didn't even think that there was an instrument called the piano, which will come eventually. He
Hmm.
probably wrote it for organ or for harpsichord or for clavichord. They all looked like the piano, but
Hmm.
they didn't. They sounded completely different. So and then same way Beethoven had a different idea when he heard his version of piano, and then we come to the modern pianos for which probably Rachmaninoff wrote. So we try to bring out this versatility of this instrument, and at the same time we try to bring out various musical styles. So I could probably start with, for example, the structure of classical period of the 1700s. I could include a Mozart sonata,
Hmm.
followed by the profound depth of a late Beethoven sonata, and then some uh, to finish off, I could give some do a long form virtuoso piece by probably Chopin, like a Chopin ballad, or by Liszt. And along with this, when I play candlelight concerts, there is a curation team specifically dedicated to do the research and
Hmm.
to come up with different ideas and themes for the concerts. So they do all the research of the demographic, and they give me a curated list of the songs, and then I do my part in preparing the songs in the of translating these songs onto the piano.
Hmm. Amazing. Do you see growing interest in classical music in India? And how different is the Indian audience as compared to the international audience?
I think having done a few international concerts and performed very much in India as well, I've realized that when you're playing in the West, for example, in Europe or America, because the audience there is they know the traditions. So when you're trying to play there, you're just trying to add your own voice or your own unique
Hmm.
perspective to this huge tradition of music of performances which these great masters have given over the years.
Hmm.
And interestingly, when I walk on to a stage in Mumbai, Delhi, or Ahmedabad, I see I see this curious and I see this. I feel the sense of curiousness and freshness in the audiences, and that's when I actually realized that when I'm playing here, I'm not only just being a pianist. In many ways, I'm being an ambassador to so many of these people,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to welcome them into this world. And this gives me this beautiful sense of responsibility to make their first experience an unforgettable and a memorable
Hmm.
one.
Amazing. How do you balance technical perfection with emotional expression when you're performing?
Yeah, this is, I guess, one of those things which stay with us artists for lives, and it is a lifelong journey trying to
Hmm.
understand this. But there was again uh, one law which was uh, all of my teachers told me very strongly that technique is only at the service of music, and it is technique is not the goal itself. It is the medium through which music can flow effortlessly.
Hmm.
And I specifically remember this one incident which really made this a very strong realization for me. This was back in 2022, and I was studying in Scotland for my master's in piano performance. And I was learning Chopin's Polonaise Fantasy, and there is this particular section in that piece which has rapid chord changes, and it happens so fast, and I was struggling to grip my hand from one chord to the other and to the other. And I asked my professor, how do I play these chords accurately and perfectly? And that's where he challenged me and he reminded me that, young man, you're not looking at this as a piece of music. You're looking at this as a way to master your technical abilities, which
Hmm.
is fine. But did you try to actually see what is the music trying to say through these chords?
Hmm.
And then I looked at the sheet music again and I tried to play these chords a couple of times. And I realized there was an overarching melody that Chopin
Ah.
was trying to convey through these chords.
Hmm.
And then when I tried to understand that and I played these chords, I realized I was not playing. I realized that I didn't need to play all of these chords in the same with the same pressure, and I had to just follow the melodic contour and play these chords in that way. And when I played it that way, the technique somehow just came
Oh,
naturally.
fascinating.
And yes, that's where I realized that. And my professor told me that time as well, that, Tavan, you are not a technician, you're a
Hmm.
musician. So
Hmm.
always try to see what the music is trying to say,
Hmm.
and then align technique aligns automatically.
What a great response. Thank you. Tavan, I have time for two more questions for you.
Sure.
Uh, I find a lot of young people now getting very interested in music. Uh,
Hmm.
like you started with your little piano, when you were 5 years old. A lot of young people I meet, the children are very interested. I wanted to ask you, what advice would you give to young Indian musicians who want to pursue a career in Western classical music?
Right. Yeah, I think uh, I would definitely say, firstly, it is a great opportunity currently. Uh, it is it is the right place, right time if someone wants to start a career as a pianist or as a Western classical musician. Um, Mainly because we are at the very beginning of this massive cultural wave that might come over the years, and so it is, I guess, the perfect opportunity, and the sky is the limit for us,
Yeah.
and we can really go the way our own ways. But the second advice I would give is the reality check, that I would say that it does take a lot of years, and I would ask them to be prepared to give it years and years of
Mm.
patience, hard work, practicing in you know practicing by themselves, and also like doing the performances, but be prepared to give it at least 10 years, 10-15 years, um, and then and the third advice I would give is, I would ask them to definitely refine their craft as a pianist, but also try to find innovative and creative ways of presenting this ancient art in a way that is more accessible
Mm.
to the mass and the larger audiences.
Mm. Very interesting. And my last question, and this is for you,
Sure.
Tavan. As you look ahead the next few years, what kind of a musical journey would you like to create for yourself?
I would I For the next 10 years, I have a vision based on two pillars. Firstly, I would like to nurture and work with the upcoming wave of young titans, like young talents. And second pillar is, I would like to make concerts a part of the mainstream cultural life.
Hmm.
Um, and I really I felt inspired when I when I saw this example of how there has been a new trend of a new obsession with watches and acquiring watches. I don't need to necessarily understand the complex mechanics of a tourbillon movement, for example, but I can still appreciate the craftsmanship, the heritage, and how it all beautifully fits together to make this fine watch. Similarly, I feel that I would like the concerts to be a space where a seasoned aficionado and someone who has not heard music, or has not heard Beethoven's music, for example, they both can feel welcome to this place, and they can both appreciate the fine craftsmanship and the fine art of piano playing. And it is I would like to make it accessible for everyone.
Very interesting. And on that note, Tawan, I just want to say what an amazing conversation this has been with you.
Thank you so
Personally,
much.
I've been a great follower of music. I've loved Western classical music, whether it was Rachmaninoff or whether it was the Beethovens or the Chopins. One has heard of
Wow.
Strauss. I've heard a lot of them from the time I was not as young as you, but from the time I discovered in my early 20s that I enjoyed this music. Thank you for talking to me
Wow.
about your journey, about talking to me about the piano, and thank you for talking to me about your vision for really creating a passion and an interest in Indian listeners. Thank you for speaking
Thank
to
you
me
so
and good
much.
luck. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.